The wedding guest had stopped pretending to check their phones. 300 seats filled the grand ballroom of the Shilla Seoul, ivory orchids cascading from crystal chandeliers, and every single person was now watching Zuri Mwangi's face instead of the empty altar. She stood frozen in the bridal suite doorway, her Nigerian lace gown weighing heavier with each passing second. Her fingers gripped the doorframe so tightly her knuckles had gone pale beneath her warm brown skin. 2 hours. He was 2 hours late. And his phone had been disconnected for the last 47 minutes. Zuri, her mother's voice cracked from somewhere behind her. Zuri, what do we tell them? But Zuri couldn't answer. Because through the massive doors at the far end of the ballroom, a figure had just entered. Tall, unhurried, dressed in a black suit that cost more than most people's cars. Her heart stopped. Not because of the suit. Not because of the way every guard in the room instinctively stepped back. But because as he slowly adjusted his cuff, the light caught the edge of a tattoo crawling up his wrist. Intricate, deliberate, unmistakable. Jun Minho lifted his gaze across 300 silent guests. And found her immediately. Like he'd known exactly where she would be standing. Like he'd always known. He's not coming, Zuri whispered to no one. Daniel's not coming. And the man who had once promised to destroy anyone who hurt her began walking toward her through the crowd of strangers. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. The whispers started before he reached the 5th row of seats. Zuri watched them spread like poison through water. Guests leaning toward each other, Korean phrases mixing with Yoruba murmurs, the careful social masks beginning to crack. Her maid of honor, Adiz, appeared at her elbow with panicked eyes, but Zuri couldn't process anything her childhood friend was saying. All she could see was him. Jun Minho moved through the crowd the way smoke moves through an open room. Inevitable, consuming, impossible to ignore. His sharp jawline hadn't softened in 6 years. His eyes were still that particular shade of dark that made people forget how to breathe. But there was something different now. Something colder. Zuri. Adiz gripped her arm. Zuri, who is that? Why is everyone moving away from him? Because they know, Zuri thought. Because everyone in Seoul's upper circles knows exactly who Jun Minho is. What he controls. What he's capable of. He stopped 3 feet away from her. The scent hit her first. Sandalwood and something darker, something that smelled like midnight and expensive leather. Her body remembered it before her mind could catch up, and she hated herself for the way her pulse stuttered. You shouldn't be here, she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. Minho's expression didn't change. His gaze swept over her gown, lingered on the trembling orchid pinned in her braids, then returned to her eyes with an intensity that felt like physical weight. Your fiancé, he said quietly. Where is he? The question wasn't casual. The question was a weapon. That's none of your concern. Zuri lifted her chin. We haven't spoken in 6 years. You don't get to walk into my wedding, Anne. Where is Daniel Park? The name sounded different in his mouth. Contaminated. Like he was tasting something rotten and trying to decide whether to spit it out. Behind her, Zuri heard her mother arguing with someone in rapid Igbo. The wedding coordinator was rushing toward them with a clipboard clutched like a shield. And 300 guests were watching the bride stand face to face with a man who clearly wasn't the groom. I don't know, Zuri admitted. The words scraped against her throat. He's not answering his phone. Something flickered across Minho's face. It happened too fast for anyone else to catch. A slight tightening around his eyes, a barely perceptible shift in his jaw. But Zuri had spent 2 years learning every micro-expression this man possessed, and she recognized it instantly. He wasn't surprised. Come with me, Minho said. Absolutely not. It wasn't a request. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several guests in the nearest rows actually stood up and backed away, their survival instincts overriding social propriety. Zuri's mother finally broke through the crowd, her elegant green wrapper swishing as she positioned herself between her daughter and the stranger. Who are you? Mrs. Mwangi demanded. This is a private ceremony. My daughter is getting married today and you? Your daughter is not getting married today, Minho interrupted. His tone remained perfectly level. Daniel Park disappeared because he owes dangerous people a significant amount of money. He's been using your daughter's business accounts to launder funds for the past 8 months. And if she remains in this building when certain individuals realize he's gone, she will become the next target. Silence. Complete devastating silence. Zuri felt the words impact her chest like physical blows. Laundering money? Her accounts? The bridal fashion empire she'd spent 5 years building from nothing. The late nights, the rejected loan applications, the tears shed in her tiny first studio. All of it potentially contaminated by the man she'd agreed to marry? That's impossible, she heard herself say. Daniel works in finance. He's respectable. His family disowned him 3 years ago. Minho's eyes never left her face. He's been lying to you since the day you met. How do you know this? Mrs. Mwangi's voice had gone sharp with protective fury. How do you know anything about my daughter's fiancé? Minho reached into his suit jacket. Every bodyguard in the room tensed. Someone's champagne glass shattered on the marble floor. But all he produced was a phone. Sleek, black, expensive, which he held out toward Zuri. Because I've been watching him for 6 months, Minho said. Scroll through. Zuri didn't move. She couldn't. Because taking that phone meant accepting that everything she'd built, the safety, the stability, the future she'd carefully constructed to replace the chaos she'd escaped, was already burning. Zuri. Her mother's voice softened. Zuri, look at me. But Zuri was looking at Minho's wrist instead. The tattoo had grown since she'd last seen it. The intricate design now crawled past his cuff, disappearing into his sleeve, dragons intertwined with cherry blossoms, symbols she recognized from 6 years ago when she'd traced them with her fingertips in the dark. Back when she'd been foolish enough to believe love could exist without consequences. Why were you watching him? She asked quietly. Minho's jaw tightened. Because he got close to something that belongs to me. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Mrs. Mwangi looked between her daughter and this stranger with growing alarm, clearly sensing the history neither of them was acknowledging. Zuri, Adi stepped forward, her bridesmaid's dress rustling. We need to call the police. If Daniel is missing and there's some kind of criminal. The police cannot help you. Minho cut her off without even glancing in her direction. The people searching for Daniel Park operate outside their jurisdiction. Way outside. He stepped closer to Zuri. Close enough that she could see the slight shadows beneath his eyes. Close enough to catch the faint scar along his hairline that hadn't been there 6 years ago. Close enough that her traitorous heart recognized him before her mind could maintain its defenses. You have 2 choices, he said, voice dropping low enough that only she could hear. Stay here, pretend this is a normal wedding emergency, and wait for the men Daniel owes to come looking for their money. Or come with me now and give yourself time to understand what you've actually been sleeping next to for the past 2 years. Don't, Zuri's voice cracked. Don't act like you're doing this out of concern for me. You made your position very clear 6 years ago. A muscle jumped in Minho's jaw. I made mistakes, he said. That doesn't mean I'll watch you die because of them. Before Zuri could respond, the ballroom doors burst open. 4 men in dark suits entered. Not guests, not staff, definitely not wedding coordinators. Their movements were too coordinated, their eyes too sharp as they scanned the crowd. They were looking for someone. And when their gazes landed on Zuri, they started walking. Minho moved faster than should have been possible for a man his size. One moment he was standing in front of her, the next he'd positioned himself as a human shield, his back to her, his stance shifting into something that radiated controlled violence. Zuri, he said calmly, go to the service entrance behind the kitchen. There's a black car waiting. Get in it. I'm not going anywhere with you. Then get in the car and leave without me. I don't care. But you're not staying here. The 4 men had stopped walking. They'd recognized Minho. Zuri could see it in the way their aggressive postures melted into something more cautious. The way wolves might hesitate when they realize they've accidentally cornered a tiger. One of them said something in Korean. Minho responded in the same language, his tone flat and cold and somehow more terrifying than shouting. The men exchanged glances. Zuri. Her mother grabbed her arm. Zuri, I don't know what's happening, but we need to leave. Now. Listen to your mother, Minho said without turning around. For once. The 4 men started backing toward the door. Whatever Minho had said to them, it had worked, temporarily. But the look in their eyes as they retreated wasn't fear. It was calculation. They would be back. They would bring more people. And they wouldn't hesitate next time. Mrs. Mwangi was already pulling Zuri toward the side entrance. Adiz and two of her aunts forming a protective circle. The wedding guests were in full chaos now, some filming on their phones, others demanding explanations, a few already heading for the exits. Zuri's carefully planned wedding had collapsed into nightmare. And at the center of the wreckage stood Jun Min-ho, watching her retreat with an expression she couldn't read. The last thing she saw before her mother pulled her through the service doors was his hand, the one with the dragon tattoo curling around his wrist, slowly closing into a fist. Like he was crushing something invisible. Like he was crushing himself. The black car was exactly where he said it would be. Zuri stared at it through the rain that had started falling. A sleek sedan with tinted windows, driver already behind the wheel, engine running. Her mother stood beside her under the small awning, still gripping her arm like Zuri might float away. "Who is that man?" Mrs. Mwangi demanded. "Zuri, I know you're in shock, but I need you to tell me right now. Who is he? Why does he know things about Daniel? Why are dangerous men at your wedding?" "Mama." Zuri's voice felt disconnected from her body. "I'll explain everything. But right now we need to." The door behind them opened. Min-ho stepped out into the rain without an umbrella, without hesitation. His black suit immediately began darkening at the shoulders, water running down the sharp angles of his face. "Get in the car," he said to Zuri. "Your family can take a separate vehicle to a safe location. I'm not separating from my daughter." Mrs. Mwangi's voice could have cut glass. She was a woman who had survived 3 military coups in Lagos, raised 4 children through economic collapse, and rebuilt her life twice from nothing. She did not flinch from men in expensive suits. Min-ho looked at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, something shifted in his expression. "Ma'am," he said, and his tone contained a respect that Zuri had rarely heard from him. "I understand. But what's happening now is connected to people who will not hesitate to use leverage against your daughter. If you come with us, you become that leverage. Then my daughter stays with me. Your daughter is already compromised." Min-ho's voice hardened. The moment Daniel Park chose her as his cover story, she became a target. The only question now is whether she'll be a target with protection or a target alone. The rain was soaking through Zuri's gown. She could feel the expensive lace growing heavy, water running down her braids, mixing with the tears she'd refused to shed. Her wedding day. This was supposed to be her wedding day. "Zuri." Her mother's grip tightened. "Tell me what to do." And there it was, the moment Zuri had been dreading for 6 years. The moment she would have to admit that the stability she'd found, the safe life she'd built, had been constructed on lies. That she'd run from one kind of danger straight into another. That the man she'd chosen because he seemed boring and predictable and harmless had been hiding something monstrous the entire time. "Go with Auntie Grace to the hotel," Zuri said finally. "All of you. Don't use credit cards. Don't go back to my apartment. I'll contact you when..." She couldn't finish the sentence. When what? When she knew what Daniel had done. When she understood why he'd vanished. When she figured out whether the man standing in the rain was her protector or her prison. "When it's safe," Min-ho finished for her. "I'll personally ensure she contacts you within 24 hours, Mrs. Mwangi. You have my word." "And what exactly is your word worth?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Min-ho's jaw tightened. For a moment, Zuri thought he might actually answer honestly. Might admit that his word had been worthless 6 years ago when he'd promised her forever and delivered abandonment instead. But all he said was, "More than you know." He opened the car door. Zuri looked at her mother, saw the fear and fury and fierce protective love battling across her familiar features, and felt her heart crack along the old fault lines. "I love you, Mama." "Zuri." She got in the car before she could change her mind. The door closed behind her. And as the sedan pulled away from the curb, carrying her deeper into the Seoul rain and further from everyone she trusted, Zuri finally let herself look at the man sitting in the shadows beside her. Min-ho's hair was plastered to his forehead. Water dripped from his jaw onto the leather seats. And his eyes, those cold, calculating, impossible eyes, were fixed on her face with an intensity that made her feel like the only person left in the world. "Start talking," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Starting with how my fiancé is connected to your world." Min-ho's hand flexed against his thigh. The dragon tattoo caught a streetlight through the rain-streaked window, And Zuri remembered tracing that design while he slept, back when she'd been foolish enough to believe she could love a monster and not get burned. Daniel Park, Minho said slowly, is not your fiancé's real name. The car moved through the neon-lit streets of Gangnam, and Zuri felt the last foundation of her safe life crumble into dust. The safe house was not what she expected. Zuri had imagined something industrial, a warehouse maybe, or a bunker beneath some anonymous building. Instead, Minho brought her to a hanok hidden in the hills above Bukshan, traditional Korean architecture surrounded by carefully maintained gardens, rain pattering softly on curved tile roofs. "This is yours?" she asked as they stepped through the wooden gate. "This belonged to my grandmother." The softness in his voice caught her off guard. She'd forgotten he was capable of softness. Or maybe she'd forced herself to forget, back when forgetting was the only way to survive losing him. "Dry clothes are in the second room on the left," Minho continued, his tone returning to neutral. "There's food in the kitchen. The staff won't disturb you tonight." Staff. Security. Housekeeping. The cook. Of course. Because Jun Minho didn't live like a normal person. He never had. Zuri followed him inside, her ruined wedding gown trailing water across the heated ondal floors. The interior was startlingly beautiful. Dark wood, paper screens, moonlight filtering through traditional lattice windows. Expensive art on the walls. Silence thick enough to taste. "I'll change," she said. "Then you're going to explain everything." "I'll be in the study." He disappeared down a corridor without looking back, and Zuri was left standing alone in a dead man's house, wearing a dress meant for a wedding that would never happen. The bedroom she found was clearly meant for guests. Neutral tones, minimal decoration, a neat stack of clothing waiting on the low bed. Women's sizes. Her sizes specifically. He'd prepared for this. The realization hit her harder than it should have. He'd known. Maybe not exactly when or how, but he'd known that eventually she would end up here. In his space. Wearing his clothes. Needing his protection. And that meant he'd been watching her for far longer than 6 months. The clothes were simple. Soft gray sweater, black pants, slippers. Nothing expensive, nothing designed to remind her of her status as a refugee in her own life. But when Zuri caught her reflection in the antique mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her carefully styled bridal makeup had run. Her braids were dripping. And her eyes, those soft brown eyes that everyone always said held too much warmth, looked hollowed out. Haunted. This morning she'd been planning the rest of her life. Now she didn't know if she had a life to plan. She found him in the study exactly where he said he would be. The room was lined with books. Korean classics, business texts, what looked like military histories. Minho had changed into dark clothes similar to hers, but the tattoo on his neck was visible now, crawling up from his collar in delicate black lines. He was staring at a screen, scrolling through documents. "Sit," he said without turning around. "I'm not a dog." That made him look at her. Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been appreciation or memory or something darker, before the familiar coldness returned. "Daniel Park," he began, was born Park Sung-ho in Busan. His father ran a small gambling operation until he borrowed money from the wrong people and got himself killed. Sung-ho inherited the debt. Rather than pay it honestly, he decided to reinvent himself. As Daniel Park. Finance professional. Financial fraud specialist. Minho turned the screen toward her. "He's moved over $40 million through shell companies in the past 3 years. Most of it through small business accounts." Zuri's stomach dropped. "My accounts. Your accounts." Minho's voice remained flat. "Your business has processed approximately $7 million in fabricated transactions over the past 8 months. He was careful. The amounts were small enough to avoid automatic flags. But the people he owes noticed when their money started disappearing. Disappearing. Daniel was skimming. Minho almost smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. He got greedy. Decided to steal from the people he was laundering for. Which is why they started looking for him. Which is why he decided today was the perfect day to vanish. Zuri's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, refusing to show weakness, but her mind was racing. $7 million. Her accounts. Her business. The dream she'd built from nothing, the way she'd proven to everyone, her family, her ex, herself, that she could survive anything. Why didn't you warn me? The words tore out of her. If you've been watching for 6 months, why did you let it get this far? Why didn't you? Because you wouldn't have believed me. The truth of it silenced her. He was right. 6 months ago, if Jun Minho had appeared at her door with accusations about her perfect fiancé, she would have called security. He would have assumed he was lying. She would have chosen Daniel's smooth reassurances over the word of the man who'd broken her heart. You could have given me evidence, she tried. I didn't have conclusive proof until 3 weeks ago. Minho turned back to the screen. And by then his people were already closing in. Exposing him prematurely would have put you in danger before I could guarantee protection. So instead you let me almost marry him. You weren't going to marry him. Minho's voice went cold. I would have stopped the ceremony myself if he hadn't run. The silence that followed was suffocating. Zuri could feel the weight of everything unsaid between them. 6 years of absence, of deliberate distance, of pretending the other person didn't exist in the same city, the same world, the same haunted memories. Why? She finally asked. Why do you care what happens to me? Minho went very still. For a long moment he didn't answer. The rain continued its soft rhythm against the windows. Somewhere in the house a clock ticked. The study smelled like old paper and something deeper. The same sandalwood she'd caught in the wedding hall, layered over him like a second skin. You know why, he said finally. I don't. Zuri's voice cracked. I really don't. Because the last time we spoke you told me I was a liability. You told me caring about me made you weak. You said. I know what I said. Then explain it to me. She was on her feet now, months of controlled emotion finally breaking through. Explain why you said those things and then spent 6 years apparently watching me from the shadows. Explain why you let me believe you didn't care while simultaneously protecting me from a threat I didn't even know existed. Explain. Because I was wrong. 3 words. 3 words that landed like bombs in the quiet study. Minho's jaw was tight. His hands, those elegant, dangerous hands, were clenched at his sides. And when he finally looked at her again, his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Regret. I was wrong, he repeated quietly. I thought pushing you away would keep you safe. I thought distance would protect you from my world. Instead, his voice caught. Instead you ran straight into a different kind of danger. And I couldn't. He stopped. Turned away. His shoulders were rigid beneath the dark fabric of his shirt, and Zuri could see the tension coiled in every line of his body. You should rest, he said, his voice stripped of emotion again. Tomorrow will be complicated. The men at your wedding will have reported back to their employers by now. We need to determine how much they know about your involvement and what they're planning next. Minho. The guest room is prepared. He still wouldn't look at her. There are guards throughout the property. You're safe here. I'll see you in the morning. He left the study without another word. And Zuri stood alone among the books and the screens and the weight of 6 years of unanswered questions, feeling more lost than she had when she'd first discovered her fiancé was gone. She couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped around midnight, but the silence was almost worse, thick and oppressive, pressing against her ears like cotton. Zuri lay on the low guest bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind cycling endlessly through the same impossible thoughts. Her business was compromised. Her reputation was destroyed. Her fiancé was a criminal. And the man who'd broken her heart 6 years ago was now the only person standing between her and people who apparently wanted to kill her. Around 2 in the morning she gave up on rest. The hanok was quiet as she moved through its corridors, paper screens glowing faintly with outdoor security lights, wooden floors cool beneath her bare feet. She didn't know where she was going until she found herself standing outside the study door. Light leaked from beneath it. He was still awake. She should go back to bed. She should maintain the professional distance he'd established. She should protect herself from the undertow of old feelings that threatened to pull her under every time he looked at her. She knocked anyway. Come in. Minho was sitting exactly where she'd left him, but the screen was dark now. Instead he held a glass of something amber, whiskey probably, and he was staring at the rain-streaked window like it contained answers to questions she couldn't imagine. You should be sleeping, he said without looking at her. So should you. His lips twitched. Not quite a smile but close. Sit down, Zuri. She sat across from him, folding her legs beneath her on the traditional floor cushion. This close, she could see the shadows beneath his eyes more clearly. Evidence of sleepless nights that had nothing to do with tonight specifically. "Tell me," she said quietly. "Tell me what really happened 6 years ago. The truth this time." Minho took a slow sip of whiskey. "What do you remember?" "I remember you telling me we were over. I remember you saying I was a weakness you couldn't afford. I remember," her voice threatened to break. "I remember waiting for 3 weeks for you to come back. To explain. To tell me it was all some kind of terrible mistake. It was a mistake. Then why?" He finally looked at her. The pain in his eyes was staggering, raw and deep and older than 6 years. It was the look of a man who had made an impossible choice and spent every day since wondering if he'd chosen wrong. "Because someone was going to hurt you," he said. "Because I had enemies who discovered how much you meant to me, and they decided you were the perfect leverage. Because the only way to remove the target from your back was to make them believe I didn't care whether you lived or died." The words hit Zuri like physical blows. "What?" "I pushed you away to save your life." Minho's voice was barely above a whisper. "I let you hate me because your hatred meant you were safe. Because as long as they believed I'd discarded you, they had no reason to touch you. You could have told me. You would have fought it." A ghost of something sad crossed his face. "You would have insisted on staying. You would have put yourself in danger trying to protect me instead, and I..." His jaw clenched. "I couldn't watch you die because of my world. I couldn't." Zuri's vision blurred with tears she'd sworn not to shed. 6 years. 6 years of believing he hadn't loved her. 6 years of rebuilding herself around that betrayal, of choosing safe and boring and predictable because she never wanted to feel that kind of devastation again. And it had all been based on a lie he'd told to keep her alive. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know. I spent 6 years hating you. I know." His voice cracked. "I deserved every moment of it. And now you expect me to just, what? Forgive you? Trust you? Let you back into my life like nothing happened?" "No." Minho set down his glass. "I expect nothing. But I'm going to protect you anyway because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. Even when you didn't know I was doing it." "What does that mean?" He hesitated. The silence stretched between them like a living thing full of years and regret and something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. "The apartment you've been living in," he said slowly. "The one with the excellent security system and the doorman who's actually a retired Special Forces officer. Who do you think owns that building?" Zuri's breath caught. "The loan you received when no bank would touch you 3 years ago. The investor who provided working capital for your business. The buyer who purchased enough inventory in your first month to keep you afloat. Stop. The reason certain competitors suddenly decided not to undercut your prices. The supplier who mysteriously gave you priority shipping during the pandemic. They. Stop." Zuri was on her feet, her whole body shaking. "You're saying everything I built, everything I thought I accomplished on my own, was yours?" Minho stood too, facing her with an intensity that made the air feel thin. "Every success was yours. Every design, every client, every late night. That was your talent, your work, your determination. I just removed obstacles. Without asking. Would you have accepted help from me?" "No." "Then I did it without asking." His voice hardened. "Because watching you struggle when I could ease your path was torture. Because every time I saw you succeed I felt..." He stopped. Swallowed. "I felt like maybe the sacrifice had been worth something." Zuri couldn't breathe. The room was too small. He was too close. The past 6 years were crumbling around her, revealing a different shape than the one she'd been living with. "I need air," she said. She fled before he could stop her. The garden was cold and wet and exactly what she needed. The shock of night air against her heated skin, the smell of rain-soaked earth, the distant sound of soul traffic beyond the traditional walls. She made it to a stone bench before her legs gave out. And there, in a dead woman's garden, surrounded by the ghosts of choices she hadn't known existed, Zuri Mwangi finally allowed herself to cry. Not for Daniel. Not for the wedding. For the 6 years she'd spent believing she was alone when she'd never been alone at all. She didn't hear him follow her. But she felt the weight settle beside her on the bench, solid, warm, present. A coat settled around her shoulders, still carrying his body heat. And his hand, the one with the dragon tattoo, came to rest against her back, not pulling her close, just there. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of it. I know. They sat in silence while she cried. And when the tears finally slowed, when her breathing steadied and the worst of the shaking passed, his hand was still there. Steady. Patient. Exactly as she remembered. The people who threatened me 6 years ago, she asked hoarsely. What happened to them? Minho's hand went still against her back. They're not a problem anymore. The way he said it told her everything she needed to know. And the people looking for Daniel? Different organization. More complicated. His fingers traced absent patterns against her spine. But manageable. For you. For me. She turned to look at him. The moonlight caught the angles of his face, throwing shadows that made him look older than 38, more tired than a man his age should be. The tattoo on his neck crawled up toward his jaw, and she remembered pressing her lips against that exact spot once, back when she'd been young and reckless and convinced that love was enough. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out exactly what Daniel took and who he owes. Then we negotiate. With criminals. With business partners. His smile was cold. Everything is business at this level. And me? What happens to me in your business negotiations? Minho's hand slid from her back to cup her face. The touch was so gentle, so unexpectedly tender that her breath caught. His thumb brushed against her cheekbone, wiping away the last traces of her tears. Nothing happens to you, he said. Nothing touches you. Nothing threatens you. Not while I'm breathing. That's not a business arrangement. No. His eyes were dark, intent, consuming. It's not. She should pull away. She knew she should pull away. But his hand was warm against her face, and his eyes held 6 years of accumulated hunger, and somewhere deep inside her, beneath the fear and the confusion and the righteous anger, something was stirring back to life. Something she'd thought she'd killed a long time ago. Minho. Shoo. His thumb brushed over her lower lip. Not tonight. Tonight you process. Tomorrow we plan. But this. His gaze dropped to her mouth. This can wait. I've waited 6 years. I can wait longer. He released her face slowly. Stood up. And without another word walked back into the house, leaving her alone with the moonlight and the weight of everything he'd just promised. The dragon tattoo on his wrist gleamed as he disappeared through the door. And Zuri realized with a sickening lurch of certainty that she was in far more danger than she'd been at her own wedding. Because the men hunting Daniel Park might want to kill her. But Jun Minho wanted something worse. He wanted her to love him again. And the terrifying part was, she wasn't sure she'd ever stopped. Morning came too soon. Zuri woke to filtered sunlight through the paper screens and the smell of something cooking, garlic, sesame oil, the warm scent of rice. Her body felt heavy, waterlogged with exhaustion, but her mind was already racing. Daniel was gone. Her business was compromised. Jun Minho was sleeping somewhere in this house. And she had exactly no idea what to do about any of it. She found clean toiletries in the bathroom, along with more clothes that fit her perfectly. A simple linen dress this time, soft gray, understated. No jewelry. No makeup. Nothing to remind her of the elaborate bridal fantasy that had shattered yesterday. The kitchen was at the back of the hammock, modernized with stainless steel appliances but still managing to feel traditional. An older Korean woman in an apron turned from the stove as Zuri entered, her face creasing into a warm smile. Ah, you're awake. Sit. I'm Auntie Kong. I've made juk. Porridge is good for shock. Zuri sat at the low table, folding her legs beneath her awkwardly. Thank you. I know who you are. Auntie Kong set a steaming bowl in front of her. He's been waiting for you for a long time. Before Zuri could ask what that meant, Minho appeared in the doorway. He'd showered and changed into a dark suit, business mode clearly. The tattoo on his neck was partially visible above his collar, and his expression was back to the controlled mask she recognized from the wedding. Eat, he said to Zuri. We have a meeting in 2 hours. What kind of meeting? The kind where we figure out who Daniel owes and how much leverage they have. He poured himself coffee from a pot on the counter, not sitting down. Your mother called 3 times. I told her you were resting and that you'd contact her after breakfast. You spoke to my mother? She's very protective. Something about his tone suggested the conversation had been significantly more intense than his description implied. Zuri felt a small, inappropriate spark of amusement imagining Mrs. Mwangi interrogating a crime lord. What did you tell her? The truth. That you're safe, that Daniel is a criminal, and that the situation is being handled. He took a sip of coffee. She told me that if anything happened to you she would personally fly to Seoul and, how did she phrase it? Show me what a Nigerian mother does to men who hurt her daughter. She's not joking. I'm aware. For a brief moment, something almost like warmth flickered across his features. Then his phone buzzed and the moment shattered. The team found Daniel's trail, he said after glancing at the screen. He booked a flight to Singapore last night but he never boarded. Zuri's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means someone stopped him. The people he owes? Possibly. Minho's jaw tightened. Or someone else with an interest in keeping him from talking. You. The question came out before she could stop it. Minho's eyes met hers. If I wanted Daniel Park dead, he said quietly, he would have been dead months ago. He's more useful alive. Useful how? He knows names. Accounts. Transfer methods. Minho set down his coffee cup. The organization he was laundering for operates in 12 countries. Daniel is a liability to them now. A loose end who could expose their entire network. But he's valuable to me because he could give me leverage over their operation. This is a business opportunity for you. Everything is a business opportunity. His voice went flat. That's how you survive in my world. Zuri forced herself to eat the porridge. It was good, warm and slightly sweet, studded with ginger and shredded chicken. Exactly what her exhausted body needed. But her mind kept circling back to the same impossible questions. The money that went through my accounts, she said carefully. What happens to my business now? The accounts are frozen pending investigation. I've already had lawyers contact the bank to begin the process of demonstrating your ignorance of the transactions. Will it work? Should. The deposits were timed when you were traveling, made through access codes you never used. The paper trail clearly shows Daniel's involvement. He paused. Your reputation may suffer temporarily, but your business itself can be salvaged. How do you know all this? Because I own the security company that monitors your business accounts. He didn't flinch at her shocked expression. I told you last night, I've been watching. Watching. The word tasted bitter. Controlling. Protecting. There's a difference? For the first time something flashed in his eyes. Something that looked almost like hurt. Yes, he said quietly. There's a difference. I never controlled your decisions. I never influenced your choices. I simply made sure the path was clear for whatever direction you chose to go. Including toward Daniel. His jaw tightened. Including toward Daniel. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken accusations. Zuri couldn't decide if she was angrier that he'd lied to her for 6 years or that he'd watched her fall in love with another man without intervening. Both betrayals felt equally devastating. I need to call my mother, she said finally. The phone on the table is secure. He left the kitchen without another word. And Zuri was left alone with the cooling porridge and the terrible realization that somewhere beneath her anger, beneath her fear, beneath the still fresh wound of yesterday's humiliation, she missed him. She missed the man she remembered from before. The one who used to laugh quietly when she mispronounced Korean words. The one who would spend hours just watching her sketch designs, claiming her creativity was the most peaceful thing he'd ever witnessed. The one who had held her through nightmares and whispered promises in the dark. That man had destroyed her once. And now he was back claiming he'd never really left. She wasn't sure she'd survive him a second time. The meeting happened in a private room at a hotel Zuri didn't recognize. All dark wood and soft lighting. A long table surrounded by men in suits who watched her enter like wolves sizing up new prey. Minho walked beside her, one hand hovering at the small of her back without quite touching. The gesture was possessive. Proactive. Claiming. Gentlemen, he said, voice carrying the particular flatness that made people flinch. This is Miss Mwangi. She's here to answer questions about her former fiancé. Former. One of the men, older, silver-haired with eyes like chips of ice, leaned forward. The wedding was yesterday. The wedding was cancelled. Minho pulled out a chair for Zuri. Sit. She sat. Miss Mwangi. The silver-haired man's attention shifted to her. I'm Lee Sung-jin. I represent certain financial interests that have been inconvenienced by Mr. Park's disappearance. You mean you're the criminals he was laundering money for? The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Beside her, Minho's hand closed around the edge of the table. But when Zuri glanced at his face, she caught something unexpected there, the ghost of satisfaction. Like her directness pleased him. Lee Sungjin's expression hadn't changed, but something shifted in his eyes. Direct, he said. I appreciate that. I appreciate answers. Zuri kept her voice steady. Daniel used my business without my knowledge or consent. I want to know exactly how much damage he did and what it will take to repair it. You're assuming we care about your business. I'm assuming you're businessmen. She met his gaze without flinching. Which means you care about outcomes. My business being destroyed helps no one. But my business being cleared of involvement and continuing to operate? That's useful to you. How so? Because if I'm ruined, it proves the accounts were fraudulent. If I recover, it proves the accounts were legitimate businesses caught up in someone else's crimes. She leaned forward slightly. Which narrative do you want investigators looking at? The silence stretched. Then Lee Sungjin laughed. It was a cold sound, barely amused, but it seemed to shift something in the room's atmosphere. Minho, he said, still looking at Zuri. You failed to mention she was clever. I don't discuss private matters. Private. The older man's eyebrows rose. Is that what this is? Minho's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Zuri felt the weight of the question pressing down on her. The unspoken assumption, the obvious conclusion these men had drawn about why she was here, under Minho's protection, facing down criminals in a private hotel room. He should correct them. She should explain that she and Minho had no relationship, that she was here purely because of circumstances, that whatever history existed between them was dead and buried. But something stopped her. Something about the way Minho was sitting, coiled, tense, radiating controlled violence, told her that letting these men believe whatever they wanted to believe might actually be protecting her. Because men like Lee Sungjin didn't hurt the possessions of men like Jun Minho. Not without consequences. What do you want? She asked instead. We want our money. Lee Sungjin's voice went flat. Daniel Park skimmed approximately $15 million from various operations over the past 2 years. $7 million went through your accounts. The rest came from other sources. $15 million. The number was staggering. And you expect me to pay it back? We expect someone to pay it back. Miss Mwangi is not responsible for Mr. Park's theft. Minho's voice cut through the room like a blade. Her accounts were vehicles, not sources. The money is not hers to return. Then perhaps you'd like to return it on her behalf? Perhaps you'd like to find Mr. Park and have this conversation with him directly. The two men stared at each other. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Zuri understood suddenly that she was watching something far more dangerous than a business negotiation. This was a power play. These men were testing Minho's limits, probing for weakness, trying to determine exactly how much he was willing to sacrifice for her. And Minho was revealing nothing. We could take her as collateral, another man spoke up, younger, sharp-featured with hungry eyes. Until the debt is settled. Minho turned his head slowly. The movement was unhurried. Deliberate. The kind of motion that gave men time to realize their mistakes. Say that again, he said quietly. The young man's face went pale. I was merely suggesting. You were suggesting taking something that belongs to me. Minho's voice hadn't changed volume, but something about its quality made everyone at the table tense. You were suggesting touching what I have claimed. You were suggesting. He smiled. The expression held no warmth. Making a very terminal mistake. Minho. Lee Sungjin raised a hand. He's young. He doesn't understand protocols. Then perhaps you should educate him. Minho's attention returned to the older man. Before someone else does it more permanently. The young man didn't speak again. But his eyes followed Zuri with something that looked dangerously like resentment. The wounded pride of a man who had been humiliated in front of his peers. He filed that away. Men like that were dangerous. Men like that remembered slights. We need Daniel Park, Lee Sungjin said finally. Find him for us and we'll consider the matter settled. Your associate can continue her business unmolested. Everyone walks away satisfied. And if Daniel can't be found? Then alternative arrangements will need to be made. The older man's gaze slid to Zuri again. I'm sure we can think of something creative. The meeting ended shortly after. Zuri didn't breathe properly until they were in the elevator, descending toward the parking garage in silence. They'll come for me, she said quietly. If you don't find Daniel. I know. The young one, he wanted to hurt me. I know. Minho's voice was cold. He won't get the chance. You can't watch me every second. I don't need to watch every second. He turned to look at her and something in his expression made her heart stutter. I only need to make sure that anyone who touches you understands exactly what will happen to them afterward. The elevator doors opened. Minho stepped out, one hand extending back toward her without looking. And despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the still bleeding wounds of 6 years, Zuri took it. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, secure, and as they walked toward the waiting car, she felt the last of her resistance beginning to crumble. 3 days passed. 3 days of safe houses and security briefings and carefully managed phone calls with her terrified family. 3 days of watching Minho work, cold and precise and ruthless, as his network searched for any trace of Daniel Park. 3 days of trying to maintain distance while sharing space. It was impossible. Every time she looked up, he was there, reading reports in the study, speaking quietly into his phone, watching her with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through every wall she tried to build. And every night she found herself drawn back to the garden. The same bench. The same moonlight. The same memories she couldn't quite escape. On the 4th night he found her there again. You should be sleeping, he said, settling beside her in the darkness. So should you. I don't sleep much anymore. He was holding something, a glass of whiskey nearly empty. Haven't in years. Bad dreams. Bad memories. She didn't ask what memories. He didn't need to. They sat in silence for a long while, listening to the distant sounds of Seoul beyond the walls. The city that never slept, humming with life and danger and millions of stories she would never know. Why didn't you just tell me? She asked finally. 6 years ago. Why didn't you explain? Would you have believed me? I don't know. She wrapped her arms around herself. Maybe. Maybe not. But at least I would have known. Known what? That you loved me enough to let me go. The words hung between them. Minho was very still. I loved you enough to let you live, he said quietly. But I never let you go. That's the truth I should have told you from the beginning. He set down his glass. Turned toward her. And in the moonlight his face was stripped of its usual coldness. Raw and open and devastating. Every decision I made from that day forward was about you, he said. Every move. Every negotiation. Every alliance. I reshaped my entire empire around keeping you safe from a distance. I built layers of protection you never saw. I watched you succeed and I watched you struggle and I watched you fall in love with another man, and every single day I wondered if I'd made the right choice. Did you? Her voice was barely a whisper. I kept you alive. His hand reached up to cup her face again, that devastating gesture she couldn't seem to resist. But I also kept you in danger you didn't know existed. And now, his thumb brushed against her cheek. Now you're right back where I was terrified of putting you in the first place. I'm here because of Daniel. Not because of you. You're here because I didn't stop Daniel sooner. His voice cracked. I saw the signs months ago. I knew something was wrong. But I hesitated because I didn't want to interfere in your life again. I didn't want to be the one who destroyed your happiness. My happiness was a lie. I know. But I didn't know that then. She should pull away. She knew she should pull away. But his hand was so warm against her face and his eyes held so much pain, and somewhere deep inside her, the part that had never stopped loving him was screaming to be heard. Minho. Don't. His voice was rough. Don't say anything yet. Just, let me have this moment. Let me pretend that you don't hate me. That you might actually. She kissed him. She didn't plan it. She didn't decide. One moment she was listening to him struggle for words, and the next her mouth was on his, desperate and angry and hungry all at once. He froze. For one terrible second she thought she'd made a mistake. Then his hand slid into her hair and his arm wrapped around her waist and he kissed her back like a man drowning. Like a man who had spent 6 years waiting for exactly this. Like a man who would burn the world down before letting her go again. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against hers. His hand was still tangled in her braids. And his eyes, those cold, controlled eyes, were blazing with something that looked dangerously close to worship. "This doesn't mean I forgive you," she whispered. "I know. It doesn't mean I trust you. I know. It doesn't mean." He kissed her again. Softer this time. Slower. A promise instead of a demand. And when he pulled back, his voice was barely audible. "It doesn't need to mean anything yet," he said. "Just stay. That's all I'm asking. Stay and let me prove that you can trust me again." He should say no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming warnings. But his arms were warm around her, and the moon was bright overhead, and for the first time in 6 years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. Safety. Home. 1 week, she heard herself say. "I'll give you 1 week to find Daniel and fix this. And then you can hate me again if you want to." His smile was sad. "I'm used to it." He helped her to her feet. His hand stayed at the small of her back as they walked toward the house. And somewhere in the darkness, a phone buzzed with the news that would change everything. Daniel Park had been found. "He's in Incheon," Minho said. "A warehouse near the old port district." It was 5 in the morning. The kitchen was bright with artificial light, and Zuri was standing in pajamas she didn't remember putting on, watching Minho pull on his tactical jacket like he was preparing for war. "Who found him?" "Pai people." His voice was clipped, focused. "He's been hiding there for 2 days, trying to negotiate safe passage to Vietnam." Vietnam. No extradition agreements with certain parties. Minho checked something on his phone. "He's desperate. Which makes him dangerous." "I'm coming with you." "No." "Minho." "Absolutely not." He turned to face her and his expression was granite. "This is not a negotiation," he said. "That warehouse is in hostile territory. The men protecting Daniel are not mine. If something goes wrong, I want answers." She stepped closer. "He used my business. He destroyed my wedding. He made me look like a criminal in front of everyone I know. I deserve to face him. You deserve to be safe. I'm tired of being protected." Her voice rose. "I'm tired of people making decisions for me, for my own good. I'm tired of being kept in the dark while everyone else decides my fate." The words hung in the air. Minho's jaw tightened. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then slowly he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small earpiece. "You stay in the car," he said. "You listen through this. If anything happens, anything at all, you leave. The driver knows safe routes." "Minho. This is not negotiable." His voice softened slightly. "But I understand. You deserve answers. I'll get them for you." She took the earpiece. Their fingers brushed. And in that brief touch she felt everything he wasn't saying. The fear, the protectiveness, the bone-deep terror of letting her anywhere near danger. "Come back," she whispered. "I always come back." He leaned in and pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "That's the one thing you can trust about me." He was gone before she could respond. And Zuri was left standing in the bright kitchen, earpiece in hand, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. The drive to Incheon took 47 minutes. Zuri sat in the back seat of a black SUV with tinted windows, the earpiece tucked into her ear, listening to the muffled sounds of Minho's team coordinating their approach. Alpha team in position. Bravo team standing by. Target confirmed inside. 3 hostiles visible. The voices were cold, professional, stripped of emotion. These were men who did this for a living. Entered dangerous situations, neutralized threats, extracted targets. And somewhere in the middle of it all was Minho, leading them directly into the kind of violence he'd spent 6 years protecting her from. Approaching warehouse now, his voice came through calm and steady. "Hold positions until my signal." Zuri's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, just like she had in the wedding hall, just like she'd done in his study. The gesture was becoming a reflex. A way to remind herself that she was still present, still real, still breathing. "Minho." A different voice, younger, slightly anxious. The south entrance is less guarded. Negative. We go through the front. But I want them to see me coming. The word sent a chill down Zuri's spine. This was the side of him she tried to forget existed. The ruthless strategist. The man who controlled souls underground not through brutality alone, but through the calculated deployment of fear. He wanted Daniel's protectors to know exactly who was arriving. He wanted them afraid. Breaching now. The sounds that followed were chaotic. Shouting voices, crashes, what might have been gunfire muffled by distance and walls. Zuri's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear the transmissions. Target secured. South wing clear. One hostile down, non-lethal. Non-lethal. The word shouldn't have brought her relief, but it did. Whatever else Minho was, whatever violence he was capable of, he hadn't killed anyone tonight. Not yet. Daniel Park. Minho's voice came through, cold as winter. It's been a long time. Minho. Daniel's voice, the voice she'd woken up next to for 2 years, sounded nothing like she remembered. It was thin. Desperate. Terrified. I can explain. You can try. The money, I never meant, it was supposed to be temporary. Alone. I was going to pay it all back. You used her. The temperature of Minho's voice dropped further. You used her business. You used her reputation. You let her believe you loved her while you were systematically destroying everything she'd built. It wasn't like that. I did care about her, You cared about her money. About her connections. About the access her legitimate business gave you to accounts that wouldn't raise suspicion. Pause. Something that might have been the sound of someone being grabbed. Tell me why I shouldn't kill you right now. Because I know things. Daniel's voice was frantic. I know about Lee Sungjin's operation. The routes, the contacts, the offshore accounts. I can give you everything, Minho. All of it. Just let me go. And Zuri? What do you plan to offer her? Silence. I didn't think so. Please. Daniel was crying now. Zuri could hear it in the trembling of his voice. Please, I'll do anything. Sign over everything. Confess to authorities. Whatever you want. What I want, Minho said slowly, is for the past 2 years of her life to have meant something. What I want is for the man she trusted not to have been a lie from the beginning. What I want, his voice cracked almost imperceptibly, is to give her back the time you stole from her. I can't do that. No. Another pause. You can't. Something happened in the silence that followed. Zuri couldn't see it, couldn't identify the sounds, but she felt a shift in the transmission. A change in the atmospheric pressure that suggested violence had occurred. Not lethal violence, but violence nonetheless. Take him to the secondary location, Minho said finally. And call Lee Sungjin. Tell him I have what he's looking for. She was waiting at the hammock when he returned. The dawn had broken by then, Seoul's skyline bleeding pink and orange behind the traditional roofline. Zuri stood in the garden, right by the stone bench, exactly where he'd found her the night before. He came through the gate alone. His suit jacket was missing. His shirt was torn at the collar, revealing more of the tattoo that crawled up his neck. There was blood on his knuckles, not his own, she suspected, and something dark in his eyes that made him look older than his years. Is he alive? She asked. He's alive. Minho stopped a few feet away. He'll be facing charges by the end of the week. The evidence has been compiled. The lawyers are moving. And Lee Sungjin? Will get his money back. Eventually. His voice was flat. I negotiated a payment plan on your behalf. Your accounts will be unfrozen within 30 days. On my behalf? I took responsibility for Daniel's debt. The words hit her like a physical shock. $15 million? It's money. He shrugged slightly like he was discussing pocket change. Money I can recover through other means. What matters is that you're clear. Why would you do that? He looked at her then, really looked, with all his walls down and his armor stripped away. Because you still haven't forgiven me for 6 years ago, he said quietly. And this is the only way I knew to start making it right. She should have argued. She should have told him that throwing money at her problems wasn't the same as fixing them. That she didn't want to be indebted to him, didn't want to owe him anything, didn't want this complicated tangle of obligations between them. But the exhaustion was hitting her suddenly. the weight of 4 days of terror and revelation and impossible emotional whiplash. She sat down on the stone bench because her legs refused to hold her anymore. Minho sat beside her. Their shoulders almost touched. The dawn painted everything gold. "I talked to my mother again last night," she said after a while. "She asked about you. What did you tell her?" "The truth. Most of it." Zuri turned her head slightly. "I told her that you and I had a history. That you're the reason I left Seoul 6 years ago. That you're complicated in ways I'm still trying to understand." "What did she say?" "She said," Zuri almost smiled. "She said that any man willing to take on $15 million of debt for her daughter is either desperately in love or desperately stupid. And she wanted to know which one you were." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I'd let her know when I figured it out." Minho was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly his hand covered hers on the bench between them. "Both," he said. "The answer is both." She didn't pull away. They watched the sun rise together, their fingers intertwined, the weight of the future pressing down on them like a physical force. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. "Now you rebuild your business. Your reputation. Your life." He squeezed her hand gently. "And I stay close enough to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. And us." He turned to look at her. His eyes were soft in the morning light, softer than she'd ever seen them, vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. "That depends on you," he said. "I told you last night I can wait. As long as it takes." "What if it takes forever?" "Then I wait forever." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture that felt more intimate than anything they'd shared the night before. "But I hope it doesn't," he added quietly. "Because I'm tired of being without you. And I think," his thumb traced circles against her palm, "I think you might be tired of being without me too." She should deny it. She should protect herself. But the truth was already written in the way her heart stuttered at his touch, in the way she couldn't seem to stop gravitating toward him, in the way 6 years of distance had done nothing to diminish what she felt. "I'm not ready," she said finally. "Not yet. There's too much to process. Too much to understand." "I know. But I'm not saying no." His breath caught. "What are you saying?" She met his eyes, those dark, consuming, impossible eyes that had haunted her dreams for 6 years. "I'm saying ask me again in a month. When the dust settles. When I've had time to figure out who I am without Daniel, without the chaos, without me hovering constantly?" "Yes." She almost smiled. "Without you watching me from the shadows like some kind of beautiful, terrifying guardian angel." "I don't do guardian angel." But his lips quirked slightly. "Maybe, protective ghost. Occasionally vengeful spirit. Those are both worse options." "I'm aware." They sat in silence for another moment. Then Minho stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "A month," he said. "I can do a month. But I'm warning you now, I don't plan to make it easy." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to be present." He tucked a stray braid behind her ear. "Visible. Unavoidable. I'm going to remind you every single day what we could have if you decide to forgive me." "That sounds like manipulation." "It's called courtship." His smile was devastating. "Korean style. We're in Korea. Everything here is Korean style." "Then you're already prepared." He walked her back into the house with one hand at the small of her back. And as the morning light flooded the traditional rooms of his grandmother's hanok, Zuri felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet. Not trust, not completely. But possibility. The dangerous, addictive possibility that maybe the man who had broken her heart was also the only one capable of putting it back together. The month that followed was exactly as Minho had promised. He was everywhere. Not in the obsessive, suffocating way she'd feared, but in 1,000 small, deliberate gestures that made it impossible to forget he existed. Fresh flowers appeared in her temporary apartment every morning. Not expensive arrangements, but carefully selected blooms that matched the seasons. Cherry blossoms in late spring, early peonies, traditional Korean varieties she'd once mentioned admiring during their first relationship. When she returned to her studio to assess the damage to her business, she found that someone had already cleaned the space, organized the chaos, preserved the designs she'd been working on before the wedding. Her seamstresses, the 3 women she'd hired when the business first started growing, had been paid for the month despite the freeze on her accounts. They greeted her with relief and confused gratitude, asking who their mysterious benefactor was. Zuri didn't answer. But she knew. "You're supposed to be giving me space," she said when she called him that evening. "I am giving you space." His voice was innocent through the phone. "I haven't seen you in person for 4 days. You sent coffee to my studio this morning. The exact order I used to get 6 years ago. I sent coffee. That's not the same as seeing you. It's surveillance. It's memory. Pause. I remember everything about you. I can't turn that off just because you asked for time." He should have been annoyed. Instead, she found herself smiling into her empty apartment. "The flowers," she said. "That was you too?" "The flower shop remembers your preferences. I simply reminded them." "Minho." "Zuri." His voice was warm when he said her name. Warm in a way that made her want to curl up inside the sound of it. "One dinner," she heard herself say. "Tomorrow night. Somewhere public. If you can manage to behave like a normal person for 2 hours. Define normal. No security team visible. No reserved restaurants. No," she hesitated. "No grand gestures. You realize you're asking me to be someone I'm not. I'm asking you to try." Silence. Then, "For you I would become anyone." The words landed somewhere deep in her chest, nestling against her heart like something fragile and dangerous. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't become someone else. Just show me the version of you that exists when you're not trying to control everything. The version I remember from before. That version is terrified of losing you again." "I know." Her voice softened. "But he's also the version I fell in love with in the first place." The admission hung in the air. She hadn't meant to say it. Hadn't meant to give him that much. But the silence on the other end of the line told her he'd heard it. Absorbed it. Was holding on to it like a lifeline. "Tomorrow," he said finally. 7 o'clock. "I'll pick you up. No car service. I'll drive myself. Minho." "Good night, Zuri." He hung up before she could respond. And she was left staring at her phone, wondering when exactly she'd started counting the hours until she could see him again. The restaurant he chose was perfect. Not a private room. Not a high-end establishment with dress codes and reservation lists. Just a small neighborhood spot in Mapo, the kind of place where locals went for excellent food and comfortable conversation. Minho was waiting outside when she arrived, wearing jeans of all things and a dark sweater that made him look almost normal. The tattoo on his wrist was visible beneath his cuff, but it was the only reminder of who he really was. "You look different," she said. "You said normal." His lips quirked. "This is me trying. It's working." They ate. They talked. Not about the business or Daniel or the complicated mess that had brought them back together, but about smaller things. Books she'd been reading. The design she was working on for a Fashion Week showcase. A documentary he'd watched about traditional Korean textiles. Normal things. Easy things. Things she'd forgotten they could have. "I went to Lagos once," he said over their second bottle of wine. "About 3 years ago." "Lagos? Why?" "Business." He swirled his wine, not meeting her eyes. "But while I was there, I visited the market you told me about. The one where your mother used to buy fabric." Zuri's heart clenched. "Balagan Market." "Yes." He finally looked up. "I bought something. I wasn't sure if I'd ever have the chance to give it to you, but..." He reached into his pocket and produced a small cloth bundle. "I've been carrying it ever since." She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a piece of a dyer fabric. Traditional Nigerian indigo-dyed cloth. The patterns she'd grown up watching her grandmother create. This particular piece was exceptional. Deep blue with white patterns that looked almost like waves or perhaps flames or perhaps flowers. "My grandmother told me about these patterns once," she said quietly. She said each design tells a story. "What story does this one tell?" "It's called a lobag." She ran her fingers over the fabric. "It means one who has a king." The silence that followed was loaded. She looked up at him. His expression was unreadable, that familiar controlled mask. But his eyes were burning with something that looked dangerously like hope. "I didn't plan that," he said. "I just thought it was beautiful. Maybe you were drawn to it for a reason." Maybe. The word hung between them. After dinner they walked. Seoul at night was a different creature than Seoul during the day. Neon and shadows, the distant pulse of nightlife, couples strolling past with their arms linked. The air was cool for early summer, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. "I should take you home," Minho said eventually. "Probably." Neither of them moved. They were standing near a small park, a patch of green between buildings, moonlit and quiet. Somewhere, a street musician was playing something soft and sad. "Can I ask you something?" Zuri said. "Anything. When you watched me. For 6 years." She turned to face him. "What did you see?" His jaw tightened. "I saw someone trying to move forward," he said quietly. "Someone building a life. Someone who seemed at peace. And that bothered you?" "It destroyed me." The admission came out rough, unfiltered. "Every time I saw you smile at someone else, I thought, this is what I gave up. This is what I lost. And she's better without me. I wasn't better." The words escaped before she could stop them. "I was surviving. There's a difference." His eyes flickered with something raw. "What does that mean?" "It means I spent 6 years trying to be happy and never quite getting there. It means I chose Daniel because he was safe, not because I loved him. It means," her voice cracked, "it means no matter how far I ran, I was always running from you." "Suri. I'm still angry." She stepped closer. "I'm still hurt. But I'm also tired of running." He reached for her slowly, giving her time to pull away. He didn't. His hand cupped her face, that devastating gesture that she'd missed more than she could admit. "I want to kiss you," he said. "I want to take you home. I want to spend the next 50 years proving that what I feel for you is worth the pain I caused." "Then do it." "Not yet." She blinked. "What?" "Not until you're sure." His thumb brushed against her cheek. "Not until you trust me. Not until maybe becomes yes. I just told you I'm tired of running." "I know. But I've waited 6 years." His smile was sad and beautiful. "I can wait a little longer. I want you to choose me with your whole heart, Suri. Not because you're exhausted or lonely or grateful. Because you want me. Only me." He kissed her forehead. Then he stepped back. "I'll take you home," he said. And even though part of her wanted to protest, wanted to close the distance again, wanted to finally stop fighting what they both knew was inevitable, a larger part of her recognized what he was doing. He was respecting her choice. For the first time, he was letting her come to him instead of pursuing her. The car ride was quiet. But when they reached her apartment building, Minho caught her hand before she could open the door. "Ask me again," he said. "Ask you what?" "What I want. What I really want. Beyond the business. Beyond the protection. Beyond everything." She met his eyes. "What do you want?" "You." The word was simple. Devastating. "I want you, Zuri Mwangi. I want mornings and arguments and late nights designing clothes. I want to learn everything about you that's changed in 6 years and remember everything that stayed the same. I want your mother to stop threatening me and your sisters to stop eyeing me with suspicion. I want." His voice broke slightly. "I want forever. But I'll take whatever pieces of you you're willing to give." She leaned across the seat and kissed him. Soft. Brief. "A promise." "Soon," she whispered against his lips. "I'm almost there." Then she opened the door and left him sitting in the car, watching her walk into her building with an expression that looked like worship. The next 2 weeks were different. Something had shifted between them, something unspoken but powerful. Minho was still present, still attentive, still showing up in 100 small ways. But now there was patience beneath the persistence. Space within the pursuit. He gave her room to breathe. And in that breathing room she found herself reaching for him. "I need help with the showcase," she admitted during one of their now regular phone calls. "The frozen accounts delayed my fabric orders. I don't have enough pieces to fill a full collection." "What do you need?" "Time. Which I don't have." She rubbed her temples. "The showcase is in 10 days. I have 12 complete pieces. I need at least 20. "Send me the designs," he said. "The ones you haven't started yet." "Why?" "Because I know every textile supplier in Asia and several in Africa. If the materials exist, I can get them to you by tomorrow." "Minho, you don't have to." "I want to." His voice was warm. "Let me help you succeed on your own terms. That's all I've ever wanted." She sent the designs. The materials arrived the next morning. 3 separate shipments from Seoul, Lagos and Mumbai, every fabric exactly right, every color precisely matched. Her team worked around the clock. And on the night before the showcase, when Zuri was still in the studio at 2 a.m., putting finishing touches on the final piece, the door opened. Minho stood in the doorway holding coffee. "You should sleep," he said. "So should you." "I couldn't." He set the coffee down and moved to stand behind her, studying the garment she was working on. "It's beautiful. It's almost done. It's still beautiful." His hands came to rest on her shoulders, warm pressure through the thin fabric of her work shirt. She leaned back into the touch without thinking about it. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "About what?" "About the question you asked. About what I want." His hands stilled. "And I want to stop being afraid." She turned in her chair to face him. "I want to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to trust someone again even though trusting has hurt me before. Zuri, I want you." The words came out steady, certain. "Not because I'm lonely or grateful or exhausted. Because I've spent the last month watching you become someone I recognize again. Someone I missed. Someone I..." He kissed her. Not soft this time. Not tentative. He kissed her like he'd been starving for 6 years and she was finally within reach. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her head back. Her fingers clutched at his sweater, pulling him closer. The coffee on the table was forgotten. The garment she'd been working on was forgotten. Everything was forgotten except the heat of his mouth and the strength of his arms and the overwhelming rightness of finally stopping the fight. "Stay," she breathed when they finally broke apart. "Tonight. Stay. Are you sure?" "Yes." She kissed him again, softer this time. "Yes, I'm sure." He gathered her against his chest, lifting her easily, carrying her away from the workstation and toward the small couch in the corner of the studio. The city hummed outside. The fabric waited patiently. And for the first time in 6 years, Zuri Mwangi allowed herself to believe in second chances. The showcase was a triumph. 22 pieces, each one a blend of Nigerian heritage and Korean aesthetic. Adire patterns on hanbok silhouettes, traditional embroidery meeting modern minimalism. The fashion press was buzzing. Buyers were circling. Her name was being mentioned alongside designers she'd admired for years. But Zuri only cared about one thing. Minho stood at the back of the room watching her work. He was in a dark suit again, back to his usual powerful aesthetic, but there was something different about him tonight. Something softer around the edges. Something that looked suspiciously like pride. When the show ended and the applause finally faded, he was waiting for her backstage. "You were extraordinary," he said. "The collection was extraordinary. I just put it together. Don't minimize yourself." His hands cupped her face. That gesture, their gesture, and his eyes burned with intensity. "You built something beautiful out of impossible circumstances. You deserve every moment of this success. I couldn't have done it without you. You would have found a way." His smile was warm. "You always do." She pulled him into a kiss right there, in front of her entire team, in front of the lingering press, in front of anyone who cared to look. When she pulled back, his expression was stunned. "Public," he said carefully. "You've never..." "I'm done hiding." She straightened his tie, a gesture of casual intimacy that felt revolutionary. "I'm done pretending I don't want this. I'm done being afraid of what people will think. People will have opinions. People always have opinions." She met his eyes. "The only opinion I care about is yours." Something shifted in his face. Something profound. "Marry me," he said. The words fell into the chaotic energy of the backstage area like stones into still water. Zuri froze. "What?" "Marry me." He reached into his pocket and produced a ring. A simple band but old, clearly antique. "This was my grandmother's. I've been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the right moment, but..." He looked around at the chaos, the people, the aftermath of her success. "But every moment with you is the right moment. And I don't want to wait anymore. Minho. I know it's too soon. I know I should give you more time. But I spent 6 years watching you from a distance, and now that I have you..." His voice cracked. "I can't imagine ever letting you go again." He should say no. It was too fast. Too complicated. There were still conversations they needed to have, wounds that hadn't fully healed, futures that needed to be discussed and planned and understood. But looking at him, this beautiful, terrifying, complicated man who had destroyed her world and then spent 6 years quietly protecting her from the shadows, she realized she already knew the answer. She'd known it since the moment he walked into her ruined wedding and everything changed. Yes, she said. His face transformed. Joy, raw and unfiltered, flooded his features in a way she'd never seen before. He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly, then pulled her into an embrace that felt like coming home. "I'll spend the rest of my life making this right," he whispered into her hair. "Every day. Every choice. I'll prove that you didn't make a mistake." "I know," she said. "I know." And as she held on to him in the middle of her triumph, surrounded by the evidence of everything she'd built and survived and become, Zuri Mwangi finally understood what she'd been searching for through all those years of careful, controlled living. Not safety. Not stability. But someone who would watch her from the shadows and step into the light when she needed him. Someone who would wait 6 years and a lifetime more if that's what it took. Someone who would burn the world down to protect her and rebuild it all just to see her smile. She'd found her king. And he'd been there all along. The wedding was small. 60 guests. A rooftop in Gangnam. Traditional Korean elements blended with Nigerian customs. A fusion that surprised some guests and delighted others. Zuri's mother presided over the ceremonies with the same fierce grace she brought to everything, though she'd made Minho swear several detailed vows in private before she'd given her blessing. "If you hurt my daughter again," she told him, "there is no corner of this earth where I will not find you. I would expect nothing less, Mrs. Mwangi. And you will learn to cook jollof rice. I will learn. Properly. Not this fusion nonsense the young people do. Properly." She'd studied him for a long moment. Then unexpectedly she'd pulled him into a fierce embrace. "Take care of her," she'd whispered. "She's been taking care of everyone else for too long." "I will." Now, standing at the altar, Minho watched Zuri approach in a gown of her own design. Nigerian lace meeting Korean hanbok styling, traditional and modern, African and Asian, utterly her. He was breathtaking. And she was his. As she reached him, taking his hands in hers, he leaned close. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything." The officiant began speaking. The guests watched in respectful silence. And somewhere in the front row, Adiz was crying happy tears while pretending she wasn't. "I, Jun Minho," he said when his time came, "take you as my wife, my partner, my conscience, my heart. I promise to protect you, to support you, to love you in silence when words fail and in action when words are not enough. I promise to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. And I promise," his voice cracked, "to never ever make you regret choosing me." "I, Zuri Mwangi," she responded, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes, "take you as my husband, my protector, my challenge, my home. I promise to trust you with my fears and my dreams. I promise to stand beside you in the light and in the shadows. I promise to forgive the past and build the future. And I promise," she squeezed his hands, "to love you loudly, fiercely and without apology for as long as we both shall live." The officiant pronounced them married. Minho kissed her like the world was ending and beginning all at once. And when they finally broke apart, breathless and smiling, the rooftop erupted in applause, Korean and Nigerian voices mingling, languages blending, two families becoming one. "I love you," he whispered against her lips. "I know." She smiled. "You've been showing me for 6 years." The reception was chaos in the best possible way. Nigerian highlife music competed with Korean ballads. Traditional dishes from both cultures covered every table. Zuri's aunties were teaching Minho's business associates how to dance, and someone had convinced his usually stoic security team to try egusi soup. Minho stood at the edge of the celebration watching his wife, move through the crowd with effortless grace. She was laughing at something her sister said. The sound hit him like a physical force. 6 years. 6 years of watching from shadows, of protecting from distance, of loving in silence. 6 years of wondering if he'd made the right choice, if the sacrifice had been worth it, if she would ever forgive him. And now she was here. His. Forever. "You're staring." He turned to find Mrs. Mwangi standing beside him, a glass of champagne in her hand and an expression that was somehow both threatening and approving. "I'm admiring," he corrected. "Same thing with you." She took a sip of champagne. "I've been watching you watch her for the past 3 months. You look at her like she's the only person in the room." "She is." Mrs. Mwangi's expression softened slightly. "My husband used to look at me like that," she said quietly. "Before he passed." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. He gave me 37 years and 4 children. That's more than most people get." She turned to face him directly. "But I need to know something, Jun Minho. And I need the truth." "Anything." "When you pushed her away 6 years ago, when you broke her heart and let her believe you didn't love her," her eyes were sharp, probing. "Was there another way? Was there something else you could have done?" The question landed like a blow. Because he'd asked himself the same thing. Every day. Every night. For 6 years. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've replayed it thousands of times. I've imagined every alternative. And the truth is," he looked at Zuri across the room. "The truth is I was terrified. I was young and arrogant and I thought the only way to protect her was to make her hate me. Maybe there was another way. Maybe I was too afraid to find it. And now I know better." He met Mrs. Mwangi's eyes. "Now I understand that pushing someone away to protect them is just another form of control. I should have trusted her. I should have given her the choice." "Yes." Her voice was firm. "You should have." "I know." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Mrs. Mwangi reached out and straightened his tie, the same gesture Zuri had made after the showcase. "Don't make the same mistake twice," she said. "Whatever happens in your world, the danger, the complications, the things I don't want to know about, you include her. You trust her. You let her choose." "I will." "Promise me." "I promise." She studied him for another long moment. Then unexpectedly she smiled. "Good." He patted his cheek once, firmly. "Now go dance with your wife. She's been looking for you." He found Zuri near the edge of the dance floor, talking with Adiz about something that had them both laughing. "May I steal my wife?" he asked. "Wife." Zuri's smile was radiant. "I'm still getting used to that word. You have a lifetime to practice." He pulled her onto the dance floor as a slow song began, something Korean and melancholy, about love that survives impossible odds. Her head rested against his shoulder. His arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she might disappear. "My mother threatened you again, didn't she?" Zuri murmured. "How did you know?" "She has a specific expression for threatening the men in her daughters' lives. Very subtle. Very terrifying. I'm beginning to understand where you get your strength." Zuri laughed softly. "She's been waiting to intimidate you for months. I think she's actually enjoying it. I think she's earned the right." They swayed in silence for a moment. Around them the celebration continued. Laughter and music and the joyful chaos of two cultures merging. But in the circle of each other's arms, they existed in their own private world. "I was afraid," Zuri admitted quietly. "Coming here tonight. Saying those vows. I kept waiting for something to go wrong. And now I'm just happy." She lifted her head to look at him. "I forgot what that felt like. Being happy without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never forget again. That's a big promise. I'm good at keeping promises." His hand traced up her spine. "When they matter." She kissed him softly. Then she pulled back, her expression shifting to something more serious. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. His heart stuttered. "What is it?" "The morning of my original wedding, the one with Daniel, I woke up feeling nothing." Her eyes searched his face. No excitement. No anticipation. Just emptiness. "I told myself it was normal. That nerves were natural. But deep down I knew." "Knew what?" "That I was marrying the wrong person." She touched his face. "This morning I woke up and couldn't stop smiling. I was nervous, yes. Terrified even. But not empty. Never empty." His throat tightened. "Zuri, I just wanted you to know." She kissed him again. "In case you ever doubt that you're the right choice." "I doubt it every day." "Then stop." Her voice was firm. "Stop doubting. Stop waiting for me to change my mind. Stop protecting me from yourself." She held his face between her hands. I chose you, Jun Minho. Fully. Completely. With my eyes wide open. And I would choose you again tomorrow and the day after and every day for the rest of our lives. He couldn't speak. The emotion was too overwhelming, too raw, too much. So he kissed her instead, deep and desperate and full of every word he couldn't say. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the song had ended. But they kept dancing anyway. Because in that moment, in that place, nothing else mattered. The honeymoon was supposed to be 2 weeks in the Maldives. They made it 3 days before Minho's phone rang with news that couldn't wait. What is it? Zuri asked, watching his expression darken as he listened. He hung up without speaking. Daniel Park escaped custody. The words fell into the peaceful morning like stones into glass. Zuri's blood went cold. What? Someone helped him. From inside. He was being transferred for trial and Minho's jaw tightened. He's gone. And the first place he's going to go is after me. No. Minho's voice was steel. He's going to try. He's not going to succeed. How do you know? Because I've spent 6 years preparing for every possible threat to you. He was already moving, pulling clothes from the closet, his body shifting into the controlled efficiency she recognized from crisis mode. Because I have people watching every airport, every border, every possible route he could take. But if someone helped him escape, then someone on my network is compromised. His eyes met hers. Which means we trust no one until I figure out who. Zuri's mind was racing. Daniel had been contained. Neutralized. A problem solved and filed away. But now he was free and he had every reason to blame her for his downfall. What do? We go home. Minho's hand cupped her face. And then I handle this. We handle this. He stilled. Zuri. You promised my mother. She met his eyes steadily. You promised you'd include me. Trust me. Let me choose. For a long moment he didn't respond. Then slowly he nodded. Together, he said. We handle this together. Seoul felt different when they returned. The city Zuri had adopted as home now seemed full of shadows. Every stranger a potential threat, every empty street a possible ambush. She found herself watching windows, checking exits, noting the positions of Minho's security team with new attention. You're learning to think like me, Minho observed on their second day back. I'm learning to survive. Same thing in my world. They'd set up operations in the Hanok, the traditional house becoming a command center, screens and equipment covering surfaces that had once held only antiques and memories. Daniel has allies we didn't know about, Minho explained, pointing to a map covered in pins and connecting lines. The person who helped him escape was connected to a subsidiary organization, one I thought I'd neutralized years ago. Why would they help him? Revenge. His voice was flat. I disrupted their operations when I took over Daniel's case. They lost money, influence, power. Helping Daniel escape is their way of sending a message. What kind of message? That I'm not untouchable. His eyes met hers. That the people I care about aren't untouchable either. The implication was clear. She was the target. Not because of anything she'd done but because of who she'd married. I should leave, she said quietly. Go somewhere he can't connect to you. Take myself out of the equation. No. Minho. Absolutely not. His voice was fierce. You're not running again. You're not hiding. And you're definitely not removing yourself from my protection. Your protection is what's putting me in danger. My protection is what's keeping you alive. He caught her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Do you think Daniel would leave you alone if you left me? Do you think these people would stop targeting you just because you weren't wearing my ring? I don't know. I do. His grip softened. They would use you to hurt me, whether we were together or not. The only difference is that if we're together I can protect you. If you leave, his voice cracked. If you leave I can't protect anything. Zuri's eyes filled with tears. I can't be the reason you get hurt, she whispered. I can't lose you because someone wants to destroy me. Then help me find him. His hands moved to cup her face. Help me end this. Not by running but by fighting. Together. How? Daniel is desperate. Alone. His allies helped him escape but they won't shelter him indefinitely. He needs money, resources, a way out of the country. Minho's expression hardened. And he has one card left to play. What card? You. Zuri's blood went cold. Me. He knows things about you that could damage your reputation. Lies he could spread. Evidence he could fabricate. If he can't get to you physically, he'll try to destroy you publicly. Then let him try. Her voice was stronger than she expected. I survived the wedding disaster. I survived the frozen accounts. I survived everyone thinking I was a criminal. I can survive whatever lies he wants to tell. Something shifted in Minho's expression. Pride, she realized. He was proud of her. There's another option, he said slowly. But you won't like it. Tell me anyway. We draw him out. His jaw tightened. We make him think he has an opportunity to get to you. And when he takes it, you capture him. Yes. Using me as bait. Yes. Zuri's heart was pounding. It was dangerous. Reckless. The kind of plan that could go wrong in 100 different ways. But it was also the kind of plan that could end this. Forever. What would I have to do? The plan was simple, which made it terrifying. Zuri would appear at a public event. The grand opening of her new studio, rebuilt and relocated to Gangnam. Security would be visible but minimal. Minho would be noticeably absent. Everything would suggest that she was vulnerable. Exposed. An easy target. He won't be able to resist, Minho explained. Daniel's ego won't allow him to stay hidden while you succeed publicly. He'll want to prove he can still hurt you. And when he shows up, my people will be in position. Disguised. Waiting. His hand covered hers. You won't be in danger for more than a few minutes. A few minutes is a long time when someone wants to kill you. He doesn't want to kill you. Minho's voice was certain. He wants to use you. Humiliate you. Prove that he still has power over your life. Death would be too quick for someone like Daniel. He wants you to suffer. How comforting. His lips quirked slightly. I know it's not much. But understanding your enemy is the first step to defeating him. And you've studied him. For months. His expression darkened. I know how he thinks. How he plans. What motivates him. He's predictable, Zuri. That's his weakness. What's his strength? Desperation. Minho met her eyes. Desperate men do desperate things. We need to be prepared for anything. The studio opening was scheduled for Friday. 4 days away. 4 days to prepare. 4 days to convince herself she could do this. On Wednesday, Zuri's phone rang with an unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello, Zuri. Daniel's voice. She froze. Nothing to say? He sounded amused. Confident. Nothing like the broken, desperate man she'd heard through Minho's earpiece that night in the warehouse. After everything we shared? We shared nothing. Her voice came out steady. You used me. I cared about you. You stole from me. I made mistakes. He paused. But so did you. Marrying him? Really, Zuri? A criminal? A monster? You're calling someone else a monster? I'm calling out hypocrisy. His voice sharpened. You left me for a man who kills people. Who controls illegal operations across a dozen countries. Who manipulates everyone around him to get what he wants. And you think I'm the villain? You are the villain. I'm the one who loved you honestly. His voice softened. I'm the one who saw your talent, your ambition, your beauty. I'm the one who wanted to build a life with you. You wanted to hide your crimes behind my success. I wanted us both to succeed. He paused. I still do. Zuri's skin crawled. What do you want, Daniel? A meeting. Just us. Somewhere public, somewhere safe. I want to explain. I want you to understand why I did what I did. You want to use me again. I want another chance. The audacity was staggering. But somewhere beneath her horror, Zuri's mind was racing. This was the opportunity they'd been waiting for. Daniel was reaching out directly. That meant he was desperate, just like Minho predicted. It meant he was making mistakes. It meant he could be caught. I'll think about it, she said carefully. Don't think too long. His voice hardened. I have information that could destroy your precious husband. Dates. Names. Evidence. If you don't meet me. Then what? Silence. Then everyone will know exactly who Jun Minho really is. And your fairy tale marriage will turn into a nightmare. He hung up. Zuri stood frozen, phone clutched in her trembling hand. Then she called Minho. He's getting desperate, Minho said that evening. Threatening me directly. That's a sign he's running out of options. But if he has evidence. He doesn't. Minho's voice was certain. Daniel was never close enough to my operations to gather real evidence. Whatever he has is speculation, rumor, or fabrication. Can fabrication still hurt us? It can cause problems. He admitted. Public scrutiny. Business complications. But nothing that can't be managed. So we proceed with the plan? We modify it. His eyes met hers. He wants a meeting. We give him one. He specifically said just us. No security. No husband. Which is why you'll wear this. Minho produced a small device, barely visible, designed to look like a decorative pin. A tracker. Audio transmitter. Panic button. Zuri took it carefully. And you'll be listening? Every word. His hand covered hers. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, I'll be there in seconds. How? Because I'll be close. His jaw tightened. Closer than he knows. She looked at the device in her hand. So small. So delicate. And yet it represented everything that had changed between them. Trust. He was trusting her to handle this. She was trusting him to protect her. Together. Tell me what to say, she said. Tell me how to get him to confess. Minho smiled. It was not a kind smile. With pleasure. The meeting was set for a cafe in Insadong. Crowded, public, the kind of place where violence would be impossible. Daniel had chosen it specifically. He thought he was being clever. Zuri arrived 10 minutes early, wearing a simple dress and the tracking device disguised as a pin on her collar. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She was ready. Zuri. Daniel appeared from the crowd like a ghost. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, sharper, with a desperate edge to his movements that hadn't been there before. His expensive clothes were slightly rumpled. His usually perfect hair was disheveled. Prison, even brief captivity, had not been kind to him. Daniel. She didn't stand. Sit down. He sat across from her, scanning the cafe with practiced paranoia. You came alone? Like you asked. And your husband? Doesn't know I'm here. The lie tasted bitter. But Daniel's shoulders relaxed slightly and she knew it had worked. I wasn't sure you'd come, he admitted. After everything. I wanted to hear what you had to say. I want to apologize. His voice was earnest. Practiced. What I did, using your accounts, lying about my past, it was wrong. I know that now. Do you? I was desperate. His eyes met hers. My father's debts, the pressure from his associates. I didn't see any other way out. So you used me. I loved you. He reached across the table. That was always real, Zuri. Whatever else was a lie, my feelings for you were true. She let him touch her hand. It took every ounce of control not to pull away. Then why run, she asked. If you loved me, why disappear on our wedding day? Because they were going to kill me. His voice dropped. The men I owed money to, they discovered I'd been skimming. They were going to make an example. I had to run. You could have told me. You would have tried to help. His grip tightened. And they would have killed you too. For a brief moment she almost believed him. Almost. What do you want, Daniel? Money. The mask slipped slightly. Enough to disappear. To start over somewhere they can't find me. You want me to pay you off. I want you to help me survive. His eyes were desperate. Your husband is worth billions. A few million to save your ex-fiance's life. That's nothing to him. And if I refuse? Then I release everything I have. His voice hardened. The evidence against Minho. The recordings I made. The documents I gathered while I was hiding. You said you wanted to apologize. I wanted to give you a choice. He leaned forward. Help me willingly and no one gets hurt. Refuse, and I destroy your new life the same way your husband destroyed mine. There was the truth beneath the lies. You're not sorry, Zuri said quietly. You're not apologizing. You're just trying to use me again. I'm trying to survive. By threatening my husband. By protecting myself. His voice rose. Do you have any idea what these people will do to me if they find me? Do you have any idea? What people? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Daniel froze. What people, Daniel? She pressed. Who are you really running from? His eyes darted around the cafe. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Lee Sung-jin's organization. The people I was laundering for. His voice dropped to a whisper. They have connections everywhere. Police. Government. Even in Minho's network. Minho's network? How do you think I escaped custody? His smile was bitter. Someone on the inside helped me. Someone who hates your husband almost as much as I do. Zuri's blood went cold. Well, there was a mole in Minho's organization. Who? She asked. Give me the money and I'll tell you. Tell me first. Do you think I'm stupid? His grip on her hand tightened painfully. The information is my only leverage. I'm not giving it away for free. Then we have nothing to discuss. He tried to pull away. He didn't let go. You're not leaving until we have a deal. His voice had gone hard. Dangerous. You and your husband owe me. He took everything I built. He turned me over to my enemies. He protected me from you. He stole you from me. The outburst drew attention from nearby tables. Daniel seemed to realize his mistake. He released her hand abruptly. $5 million, he said quietly. That's my price. $5 million and the name of the traitor in your husband's organization. And if I don't have access to that kind of money? Your husband does. Daniel stood. You have 48 hours to get it. After that, his smile was cold. I release everything. And I disappear. For good. He walked out of the cafe without looking back. Zuri sat frozen for a long moment. Then she touched the pin on her collar. Did you hear that? Minho's voice came through the tiny earpiece hidden in her left ear. Every word. His voice was cold as ice. I'm coming to get you. The car ride back to the Hanok was silent. Minho's jaw was tight, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Zuri could feel the fury radiating off him in waves, but he didn't speak. Not until they were safely inside. A traitor, he said finally. Someone in my organization helped him escape. Someone close enough to access secure information. Do you know who? I have suspicions. His eyes met hers. But I need to be certain before I act. What will you do when you find them? He didn't answer. Which was answer enough. Daniel will release whatever he has in 48 hours, Zuri said. Whether you pay him or not, eventually he won't release anything. Minho's voice was certain. Because he won't have the chance. What are you planning? I'm planning to end this. He cupped her face. Tonight. Before he can hurt you or threaten us again. How? The less you know, the better. No. She pulled back. You promised. No more secrets. No more protecting me from the truth. If you're going to do something, I'm going to find him. His voice was flat. I'm going to find the traitor. And I'm going to make sure neither of them can ever threaten us again. Kill them. The word hung in the air. Minho's expression didn't change. If necessary. Zuri's stomach churned. She knew who he was. She'd always known. But hearing it stated so plainly, so coldly, was different from theoretical knowledge. This was real. This was who she'd married. There has to be another way, she said. There isn't. There's always another way. Not in my world. His voice softened slightly. Zuri, these people don't respond to negotiation. They don't respect legal consequences. The only language they understand is power. And power in this world means being willing to do what others won't. But if you kill them, then we're safe. His hands cupped her face again. That's all that matters to me. Your safety. Our future. Everything else is negotiable. My conscience isn't negotiable. He stilled. What does that mean? It means I can't be married to a murderer. The words came out harder than she intended. It means I can't build a life with someone who solves problems by ending lives. Even if those lives would end yours? Even then. They stared at each other. The silence stretched. You're asking me to be something I'm not, he said finally. I'm asking you to try. Trying could get you killed. Not trying will kill our marriage. Her eyes filled with tears. I can accept your world, Minho. I can accept the danger and the secrets and the constant vigilance. But I can't accept you becoming a monster to protect me. I've always been a monster. No. She touched his face. You've always been capable of monstrous things. There's a difference. And I married the man who chose not to do them when he had another option. His jaw tightened. What option do I have now? Find Daniel. Find the traitor. Turn them over to the authorities. The authorities are compromised. Then find authorities who aren't. She held his gaze. You're the most powerful man in Seoul. Use that power for something other than violence. For a long moment he didn't respond. Then slowly he pulled her into an embrace. You're going to be the death of me, he murmured against her hair. I'd rather be the life of you. His arms tightened. I'll try, he said finally. For you. But if trying fails, if they get too close, then we'll figure out another way together. Together. He kissed her forehead. And somewhere in the shadows of the hammock, a decision was made that would change everything. The traitor was found the next morning. His name was Kang Jae-won, a mid-level security operative who had been with Minho's organization for 8 years. He'd been turned 3 months ago, bought by Lee Sung-jin's people with a combination of money and threats against his family. Minho confronted him in a warehouse near the docks. Zuri watched through a video feed, her heart pounding, her hands gripping the edge of the table in their temporary command center. You helped Daniel Park escape, Minho said. His voice was calm, controlled, terrifying. You compromised my organization. You put my wife in danger. Jaewon was sweating, his eyes darting around the warehouse. They had my daughter. My wife. They said they would kill them if I didn't. You could have come to me. You would have killed me. I might still kill you. Minho stepped closer. But my wife asked me to try something different. So here's what's going to happen. Jaewon's eyes widened. What? You're going to give me every name, every contact, every piece of information Lee Sung-jin's people gave you. And then you're going to disappear. Disappear. New identity. New location. Your family comes with you. Minho's voice was flat. You'll never work in this field again. You'll never contact anyone from your old life. And if I ever see your face in Seoul. I understand. Jaewon's voice was desperate. I understand. I'll do whatever you want. Start talking. The interrogation lasted 3 hours. By the end, Minho had enough information to dismantle Lee Sung-jin's entire operation. And he'd kept his promise to Zuri. No one had died. Daniel Park was arrested 2 days later. International authorities, contacted through channels Minho had cultivated over decades, picked him up trying to board a flight to Vietnam with falsified documents. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Fraud. Money laundering. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. He would spend the next 20 years in prison. Minimum. Zuri watched the news coverage from the hammock, Minho's arm around her shoulders, the morning light streaming through traditional paper windows. It's over, she said quietly. It's over. You did it without, she couldn't finish the sentence. Without killing anyone. His voice was thoughtful. I wasn't sure I could. But you did. For you. He turned her face toward him. Only for you. She kissed him softly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His smile was slightly sad. This world doesn't change overnight. There will be other threats. Other complications. Other moments where the easy path is violence. And you'll find another way. I'll try. He pulled her closer. That's all I can promise. That's all I'm asking. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up beyond the traditional walls. My mother called, Zuri said eventually. What did she say? She said she's proud of me. Zuri smiled. And she's reserving judgment on you. Progress. Definite progress. He laughed. A real laugh, warm and surprised and utterly human. She realized she'd never heard him laugh like that before. What? He asked, catching her expression. Nothing. She leaned into his shoulder. I just love you. I love you too. His arms tightened around her. More than I ever thought I could love anything. Outside, Seoul continued its endless motion. Traffic and construction and millions of lives intersecting and diverging. But inside the hammock, in the quiet of the morning, two people who had found each other against impossible odds finally allowed themselves to believe in the future. A future built on trust. On honesty. On the choice to be better. Together. 3 years later. The fashion house occupied the entire top floor of a Gangnam tower. Glass and light and fabric everywhere. Zuri's vision made manifest on a scale she'd never imagined. She stood at the window of her private office, watching the city spread out below her, one hand resting on her swelling belly. The buyers from Paris confirmed, Adiz said from the doorway. They want the entire spring collection. All 30 pieces? All 30 pieces. Adiz grinned. Your Nigerian-Korean fusion is taking over the fashion world. Zuri smiled, but her attention was elsewhere. The door had opened again. Minho stepped in, still wearing the suit he'd worn to his morning meetings, his tattoo visible at his collar. Am I interrupting? Never. Zuri crossed to him, accepting his kiss on her forehead. How did the negotiations go? Successfully. His hand came to rest on her belly. The legitimate business expansion is on track. 3 new regions by next quarter. Legitimate business. It had taken 3 years, but Minho was systematically restructuring his empire, keeping the profitable ventures, dismantling the dangerous ones, transforming himself from crime lord to respectable businessman. It wasn't easy. It wasn't without complications. But he was trying. For her. For their family. The baby kicked this morning, she said. His hand pressed more firmly against her belly. I missed it. You were in meetings. I'll cancel tomorrow's meetings. You have meetings with the Singapore investors. They can wait. His eyes were soft. Nothing is more important than this. She smiled. 3 years. 3 years of building something real, something lasting, something neither of them had believed was possible. No. Have you thought about names? She asked. I have a suggestion. He pulled her closer. What do you think of? His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Dismissed it. What do you think of Suyun? He continued. If it's a girl. It means elegant and graceful. Zuri nodded. I like it. And for a boy. Tund. His smile was soft. Your grandfather's name. Her eyes filled with tears. How did you know? Your mother told me. He kissed her forehead again. She also told me if I forgot it, she would fly here personally to remind me. Zuri laughed through her tears. She's getting better with her threats. She's getting more creative. He wiped her tears away with his thumb. I'm learning to appreciate it. They stood together at the window, watching the city they'd claimed as their own. 2 people from different worlds. Different backgrounds. Different ideas of love and trust and family. And yet somehow. Here. Together. Forever. I have something for you, Minho said. Another gift. You spoil me. I spoil what's mine. He pulled out a small box. Open it. Inside was a ring. Not a new one, but the antique band she'd worn since their wedding, now enhanced with additional stones. The center diamond is from your grandmother's necklace, he explained. Your mother had it sent over. The smaller ones are from my grandmother's collection. I thought, he paused. I thought our child should have something from both families. Zuri couldn't speak. She pulled him into an embrace, holding on as tightly as her pregnant belly would allow. I love you, she whispered. I love you more. Impossible. Nothing is impossible. He held her face in his hands. Not anymore. Not with you. She kissed him. Long. Full of every promise they'd made and every one they would keep. And somewhere in the city below, life continued. Dangerous and beautiful and unpredictable. But inside that glass tower, in the arms of the man who had once been her nightmare and had become her dream, Zuri Mwangijun finally understood what she had been searching for all along. Not safety. Not stability. But the courage to love completely. Without fear. Without reservation. Forever. The night their daughter was born, the skies over Seoul split open with the first spring rain. Zuri lay in the hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, their baby girl nestled against her chest. Minho sat beside them, his usually controlled expression shattered into something raw and wondering. He hadn't let go of Zuri's hand for 7 hours. She's perfect, he whispered. She's ours. Siyun. He touched his daughter's tiny fist with one finger. Pai Siyun. The baby's grip closed around his finger. Minho went absolutely still. She knows you, Suri said softly. She's strong. His voice cracked. Like her mother. Like her father. He met her eyes. Everything they'd survived. The betrayal, the danger, the years of separation, the impossible fight to find their way back to each other. It was all worth it. For this moment. For this family. For this life they'd built from ashes and love. I will protect her, he said. Both of you. Until my last breath. I know. Nothing will touch her. Nothing will hurt her. I swear. Minho. She pulled him closer, mindful of the baby between them. Stop planning for disaster. Be here. With us. He closed his eyes. When he opened them they were clear. Present. I'm here, he said. I'm not going anywhere. She kissed him. Soft. Sweet. A promise. And outside the hospital window the spring rain continued to fall, washing Seoul clean, making everything new again. Just like them. 5 years later. The Hanok had grown. New buildings had been added to accommodate their expanding family. A son born 2 years after Soo-yeon, another daughter the following year. Traditional architecture blended with modern additions, respect for the past meeting hope for the future. Suri sat in the garden watching her children play. Soo-yeon was teaching her younger brother how to fold paper cranes, her concentration fierce and precise. Little Amara had discovered a beetle and was examining it with scientific intensity. Mama. Tund abandoned the paper cranes. Look what Nuna made. He brandished a slightly crumpled crane, his face radiant with accomplishment. It's beautiful, Suri said. Show your father when he gets home. When is Appa coming? Soon. As if summoned, the garden gate opened. Minho stepped through, still in his business clothes, his tie loosened and his expression softening the moment he saw his family. Appa! 3 voices shouted simultaneously. He was immediately swarmed. Soo-yeon claimed his right hand, Tund his left, and Amara attached herself to his leg like a koala. Help, he said to Suri, though his smile said he wanted no rescue at all. You're on your own. She watched him negotiate with their children, fierce and gentle all at once, answering Soo-yeon's questions about his meetings, admiring Tund's paper crane, carefully extracting Amara without dropping her. This man. This terrifying, tender, complicated man. He was nothing like she'd expected. Everything she'd needed. Later, after dinner, after bedtime stories, after the house had settled into peaceful quiet, he found her in the garden again. You're thinking, he said. Always. He sat beside her on the stone bench. Their bench, the one where everything had changed. Good thoughts. Mostly. She leaned into his shoulder. I was remembering the wedding. Which one? She laughed. The one that actually happened. Ah. His arm wrapped around her. I remember that one fondly. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Daniel hadn't run? If you hadn't come to the wedding? No. Never. Never. He turned to face her. Because any path that didn't lead to this moment, to our children, to our life, isn't worth imagining. She kissed him. Not soft this time. Deep and hungry and full of everything she still felt after 5 years and 3 children and countless complications. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with familiar heat. The children are asleep, he murmured. They are. And we have a perfectly good bedroom. We do. I'm just stating facts. Very compelling facts. She stood, pulling him with her. I think we should investigate further. He laughed, that warm, surprised laugh that still caught her off guard. I love you, he said. I know. Say it back. Make me. His smile turned dangerous. Challenge accepted. And as they disappeared into the house, leaving the moonlit garden to its own quiet magic, Suri Mwangijun understood that this was what she'd been building toward her entire life. Not safety. Not predictability. But this. Passion and partnership. Danger and devotion. A love story that began with disaster and ended. No. Not ended. Continued. Forever. Mama. The small voice woke Suri from a deep sleep. Beside her, Minho was already alert, years of training making him impossible to fully surprise. Soo-yeon. Suri sat up, finding her eldest daughter standing in the doorway in her pajamas. What's wrong? I had a bad dream. Minho was already moving, crossing the room to gather their daughter into his arms. What kind of bad dream? The kind where you and Mama went away. Sion's voice was small. And didn't come back. Zuri's heart clenched. Children always found the deepest fears. Come here, she said, patting the space between them on the bed. Let's talk about it. Minho carried Soo-yeon over, settling her between her parents with practiced ease. The little girl immediately burrowed under the covers, seeking warmth and comfort. Mama and I aren't going anywhere, Minho said firmly. We're right here. We're always right here. Promise. Promise. Double promise? Triple promise. Zuri smoothed her daughter's hair. No force in the universe could take us away from you. Soo-yeon considered this. Appa, she said finally. Are you a bad man? The question landed like a blow. Zuri's breath caught. Minho was very still. Why do you ask that? Some kids at school said their parents said you were. Soo-yeon's voice was matter-of-fact. They said you did bad things a long time ago. The silence stretched. Then Minho spoke, his voice quiet and honest. I have done bad things, he said. A long time ago, before you were born, I made choices that hurt people. I'm not proud of them. But you're not bad now? I try not to be. His hand found Zuri's over their daughter's head. Your mother helps me be better. You and your brother and sister help me be better. Every day I try to be the kind of man you can be proud of. Soo-yeon processed this. So you were bad before, but now you're good? I'm trying to be good. His smile was sad. That's all any of us can do. I think you're good, Soo-yeon declared. I think you're the best Appa in the whole world. I think you might be biased. I think I'm right. Zuri laughed softly. She gets that from you, she told Minho. Gets what? The stubbornness. The certainty. The complete inability to consider that she might be wrong. Those are excellent qualities. They're exhausting qualities. That too. Soo-yeon yawned, already drifting back toward sleep in the safety of her parents' bed. Can I stay here tonight? She mumbled. Yes, they said simultaneously. Within minutes she was asleep. Minho and Zuri lay on either side of her, their hands still linked above their daughter's peaceful form. She's going to hear more things like that, Zuri said quietly. As she gets older. As she understands more. I know. We'll have to tell them eventually. All of it. I know. His thumb traced circles against her palm. But not tonight. No. Not tonight. They watched their daughter sleep. Outside, Seoul continued its eternal motion. Millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of choices being made every moment. But inside the hanok, in the quiet of the night, two people who had once been enemies, then lovers, then strangers, then soulmates, held hands across the body of their sleeping child. Knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges, whatever threats, whatever complications, they would face it together. They would face everything together. Forever. The morning sun flooded the traditional house with gold. Zuri stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching her family wake up one by one. Soo-yeon first, always the early riser, already asking questions about the day ahead. Tun next, stumbling out with his hair in every direction, demanding breakfast. Amara last, carried by Minho, still half asleep against his shoulder. Mama, she mumbled. Want mama. Zuri set down her coffee and took her youngest daughter, feeling the warm weight of her settle against her heart. Good morning, my love. Morning. Amara yawned. Hungry. Breakfast is coming. Pancakes. If you ask your father nicely. Amara's head turned toward Minho. Appa. Pancakes. Please. His expression melted. Pancakes, he agreed. For my girls. And me. Tund protested. And my boy. The kitchen filled with chaos. Flour everywhere, children arguing about toppings, Minho somehow managing to produce perfect pancakes despite the surrounding mayhem. Zuri watched from the doorway. This was what she'd been afraid to want. This was what she'd spent years running from, protecting herself from, convincing herself she didn't need. Now it was hers. Mama. Soo-yeon's voice cut through her thoughts. Appa says you have to eat too. Appa's right. She joined her family at the table. Minho's hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. A question. A check-in. I'm okay, she said quietly. Better than okay? So much better than okay. He smiled. And as the morning sun continued to rise, flooding the traditional house with golden light, Zuri Mwangi-jun finally understood what it meant to be home. Not a place. Not a building. But this. Them. Together. Forever. That evening after the children were in bed, Minho found her in the garden one last time. "You've been coming here a lot lately," he observed. "It's where everything changed." "Which change?" "All of them." She smiled. "This is where you told me the truth about why you left. This is where I first kissed you again. This is where I decided to stop being afraid." He sat beside her on the bench. Their bench. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Profoundly." "No regrets?" "None. Even knowing everything about me? Everything I was. Especially knowing that." She turned to face him. "Because knowing everything and still choosing to stay, that's what love is. Not the easy parts. Not the romantic gestures. But the hard choices, made again and again every single day." His hand cupped her face. "I don't deserve you." "Maybe not." Her smile was teasing. "But you're stuck with me anyway." "I'm not stuck." He kissed her softly. "I'm blessed." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge above Seoul. "I used to be afraid of this," he admitted eventually. "Of what?" "Happiness." His voice was quiet. "I spent so many years building walls, protecting myself from attachment, convincing myself that caring about people made me weak. And now," he gestured toward the house where their children slept peacefully. "Now I can't imagine anything else. Happiness isn't weakness. I know that now." His eyes met hers. "You taught me that. We taught each other." He pulled her closer. She rested her head against his shoulder. And somewhere in the peaceful darkness of the garden, surrounded by the ghosts of the past and the promises of the future, they found each other again. Like they always had. Like they always would. Forever. The story of Zuri Mwangi and Jun Minho would be told for generations. In fashion circles she was a legend. The Nigerian designer who had transformed Korean fashion, blending cultures in ways that had never been imagined. In business circles he was a cautionary tale and inspiration. The crime lord who had walked away from power to become a legitimate businessman and devoted father. But to their children they were simply Mama and Appa. The parents who kissed them goodnight. Who attended every recital. Who argued about whose turn it was to drive carpool. Who loved each other with a quiet intensity that their children would only fully understand when they were grown. "Tell us the story again," Seon asked on her 10th birthday. "About how you and Mama met." Minho glanced at Zuri. She nodded. "Some stories were worth telling. Even the painful parts. Your mother was supposed to marry another man," he began. "But on the day of the wedding he disappeared." "Why?" "Because he was a coward. And a criminal. And he had made very dangerous enemies." "And you saved her?" "I tried." His smile was rueful. "Your mother mostly saved herself. She's very stubborn." "Like me," Seon declared. "Exactly like you." The children listened, rapt as the story unfolded. Danger and romance, betrayal and redemption, fear and love. They would hear this story many times over the years, each telling revealing new details as they grew old enough to understand. But the ending was always the same. "And then?" Amara asked, even though she knew the answer. "And then," Minho said, pulling Zuri close, "we lived. Happily ever after?" He met his wife's eyes. She was smiling. The same smile that had captivated him 20 years ago, the smile he would spend the rest of his life trying to deserve. "Better than that," he said. "We lived honestly. We lived bravely. We lived together." And somewhere beyond the Hanok walls, the city of Seoul continued its eternal dance. Millions of lives intersecting, millions of stories beginning and ending. But inside the traditional house, surrounded by the people they loved, Zuri and Minho had finally found what they'd been searching for. Not a fairy tale. Not perfection. But something better. Something real. Something that would last. Forever.